It was about 7 years ago, on Halloween night, when the streets had already gone quiet and even the neighbors had stopped playing their cheesy, spooky sound effects. I was sitting in the living room with my cousin Q, while my little cousin's baby alive doll lay face down on the floor. Q had always hated the doll, calling it creepy, and would sometimes throw it down the basement stairs. I didn't think much of it until we heard a strange rasping sound outside, almost like an old man trying to speak. When I checked the window, no one was there, and the neighborhood was still. Then came loud whispering, like a child and a woman talking. Q swore it was the doll, but it didn't even have batteries. A few minutes later, the rasping returned, and I noticed the doll had shifted. Its eyes were now open, and it felt heavier in my hands. I dropped it instantly, and Q tossed it down the basement again. I never knew what to make of the night, but I only saw the doll once more lying on the top basement step, as if it had climbed back up on its own. It was a cold, quiet night, and I had just turned off my reading lamp when I heard a single, solid knock on my bedroom window. At first, I tried to convince myself it was a tree branch, but when the second knock came exactly the same, I knew it was a fist. I stayed still, hoping whoever it was would leave, but the knocking kept coming in slow, deliberate intervals. Finally, I turned to look and caught a glimpse of a dark figure ducking below the window. My heart dropped, and I ran to the kitchen to call the police. That's when I saw another man standing at the kitchen window, staring at me before bolting. Moments later, my neighbor called to warn me that 3 men in black had been on my property, one holding something shiny. I ran upstairs to hide in the bathroom as knocking echoed at my front door. By the time the police arrived, the men had vanished into the woods, and they were never caught. That same week, I finally put blinds on every window in the house. When I was 12, I met a boy named Tom who lived at the end of my street. He was 16, strange, and way too eager to hang out. At first, I thought he was just lonely, but he quickly became obsessive, calling me nonstop, leaving annoyed messages, and showing up at my house if I didn't answer. One day, he invited me over, and the moment I stepped inside, I was hit with the stench of his filthy, cluttered home. Broken glass, stained walls, clothes everywhere, and then his father appeared, a large, intimidating man who just grunted at me before stomping off. I made an excuse to leave, but Tom's smile turned into a cold, angry stare. That night, I found threatening emails from an account I'd never given him, saying things like, "I know where you live." Not long after, I looked out my window and saw his father's face peering in through the bushes. I called the police, and my dad rushed home. We filed for a restraining order, and a month later, they moved away, but not before leaving me with a lasting fear of uninvited visitors. When my buddy moved into my place as a roommate, things were fine at first until we realized the basement suite was still rented out to a strange woman and her even stranger brother. They barely spoke, acted paranoid, and gave off a bad vibe. One snowy night, after I got home, I noticed my beer missing from the fridge. My roommate swore he hadn't touched it, but when we checked outside, we found bare footprints in the snow leading from their suite door to our garage. We confronted them, saw someone peek through the curtain, but they never answered. The cops came, ran their names, and told us the brother had a warrant in another province and a history of breaking and entering. Since it wasn't a local warrant and nothing could be proven, they left. That night, while I slept, I woke to my doorknob rattling violently. My roommate swore it wasn't him. That was all I needed to know. We moved out within weeks. Grateful I always locked my bedroom door at night. It was my friend's 21st birthday, and the house was packed with people, music blaring, drinks flowing, and strangers everywhere. In the middle of it all, I noticed one man who didn't seem to belong. He was older, sitting quietly in the corner, watching everyone without saying a word. I assumed he was someone's relative and didn't think much of it. Hours passed, people left, and the crowd thinned. But when I checked the corner again, he was gone. I figured he had finally left. A few of us stayed the night, and I crashed on the couch in the den. Sometime after midnight, I woke up feeling thirsty and went upstairs to grab a glass of water. When I came back, something fell off. Across from the couch was a sliding closet door, slightly open. I couldn't see inside, but the memory of that silent, out-of-place man came rushing back. I stayed still, trying to convince myself I was overreacting until the door slid open another inch. My heart started pounding. Whoever was in there had been hiding the whole time. I made a split-second decision, jumped over the other couch, and sprinted up the stairs to the living room where my friends were sleeping. They woke up as I frantically told them what happened. We all turned toward the den, just in time to hear the back door open and slam shut. We called the police, but by the time they searched the property, the man was gone. He had been sitting in the closet, silently watching, just waiting for the right moment. It was close to midnight when my shift at TJ Maxx ended, and as usual, all the employees walked out together while the security guard kept watch from the sidewalk. I was almost at my car when a vehicle pulled up behind me, a woman in the driver's seat and a teenage girl in the passenger seat. The woman rolled down her window and hurriedly told me they had just gotten into town to visit family, had run out of gas, and didn't have any money. She asked if I could spare a few dollars. I told her honestly I had no cash on me, but then she pushed further, asking if I would get into the car with them, ride to a gas station, and buy $10 worth of gas. The request alone set off alarm bells in my head. I refused again, but she kept pressing, her voice urgent. While the daughter never spoke, just stared at me with a strange, fixed expression, licking her lips and nervously wringing her fingers. That's when my gut screamed that something was wrong. I quickly stepped away, heading back toward the store where the security guard was still standing. As soon as they saw me moving toward him, the woman hit the gas and sped off. The guard offered to check the parking lot with me, but they were already gone. I couldn't shake the feeling that if I had gotten in that car, I wouldn't have made it to any gas station. Something about the daughter's look told me their story was more than just a lie, it was bait. It was a Friday night around 2 a.m., and I was alone on my office floor, the rest of the building dark and silent. I was typing away when I heard a faint noise outside my cubicle at first. I thought it was just the building settling, but then I heard the unmistakable chime of a computer starting up. No one else was scheduled to work that night. I stood on my chair to peek over the cubicle walls and saw the glow of a monitor across the room. I called out, asking if anyone was there. The only response was the screen going black. My pulse spiked. I shut off my lamp and monitor, crouched low, and crept toward the exit. Near the stairwell, I caught sight of him, a man dressed entirely in black, crouched behind a large office plant. I don't think he realized I'd seen him. I forced myself to walk casually to the stairwell door, slipped through, and started down the steps. Moments later, the door above slammed open and rapid footsteps echoed after me. I bolted down flight after flight, burst into the lobby, and ran outside to call the police. They searched the building top to bottom, but found no one. My boss later confirmed I was the only one scheduled to be there. I kept doing night shifts for a short while after that, locking every possible entrance. But I never felt safe there again. I'll never forget that moment, the quiet knowledge that someone had been hiding, just watching. It was about 4 a.m. when I woke up to the sound of someone rattling my back patio door. At first, I thought it might be the wind, but then came the distinct squeak of the handle being tested. I grabbed my phone and crept to the kitchen, peeking through the blind just enough to see a man standing there. He looked homeless, dirty jacket, torn jeans, matted hair, but there was something in his posture that didn't seem desperate, just deliberate. I froze, debating whether to turn on the light, when his head suddenly snapped toward the window like he sensed me. Our eyes met for barely a second before he charged at the door, slamming into it so hard the glass rattled. I stumbled backward, yelling for my husband, who came running with a bat while I dialed 911. The man kept pounding and yanking at the door handle, muttering something I couldn't make out, until the sound of sirens grew near. Then he bolted, disappearing into the alley behind the house. The police searched but didn't find him. They told us it was likely an attempted break-in and that similar reports had come in from our neighborhood over the past week. For months after, I couldn't walk into my kitchen at night without checking the door twice. I still remember the way his eyes locked on mine, like he expected to be seen, but had been waiting for that exact moment. I was house sitting for a friend while she was out of town, and for the first couple of nights everything seemed fine. On the third night, I noticed odd little things: my phone charger unplugged, a bottle of water on the nightstand that I didn't remember opening, and a faint smell of cologne in the bedroom. I told myself I was imagining it. On the fourth night, I woke around 2 a.m. to the sound of breathing that wasn't mine. It was slow, steady, and coming from directly under the bed. I was sitting at home when my phone buzzed with a FaceTime call from my friend Ty. When I answered, her face filled the screen, pale and terrified, and she blurted out that she'd been kidnapped. A man's voice in the background told her to ask me for $10,000 or she'd be killed. My hand shook as I tried to calm her and ask where she was, but the man shouted over me, demanding I transfer the money immediately. Something felt strange. Ty's eyes kept darting like she was looking at a script, and the background was oddly still. I told them I needed a few minutes to get the cash, hung up, and called Ty's husband. He told me she was sitting right next to him on the couch, perfectly safe. The police later said it was a deepfake scam using videos and images scraped from her social media to make a realistic live video feed. It was so convincing that for those few minutes, I was sure I was watching my friend plead for her life. Now every time my phone rings unexpectedly, I think about how easily my mind believed what I saw, and how if I hadn't made the call to her husband, I might have sent thousands of dollars into the hands of a criminal.